I've got 20 photography tips for beginners that'll help you get good fast. My name's Jared. I'm a photographer with almost 20 years of experience, and I've shot everything from weddings to NASCAR. And here are things that I've identified that have helped me become better. And as I've also taught photography over the last decade, there are things that have helped other people become better photographers as well. Number one is understanding what makes a great photo. Just because you have a camera and you want to go out and take pictures doesn't necessarily mean that you understand what comes together to make for a good photo. Understanding everything from composition to framing is important to tell the story. A lot of times we look at a photo and we get no emotion out of that photo. Other photos we look at and man, we feel like we're a part of that entire image that took place and we feel like we're there. And what's the difference between those two things? Is it what's going on in the image, or is it how it was captured, the way it was captured, the way it was composed? There definitely can be a story that's told based on the composition and the way that that image was captured. And so it's great to study images and really understand what makes for a good photo. That means going on websites like Unsplash or Pexels. There's a whole handful of other websites out there where people upload their images, and look through those images based on the type of photography that you're interested in, whether that be landscape or portraits or whatever it is. Look through all of those photos and which photos stick out to you. Pause and look at those photos longer and try to identify what is it about that photo that's capturing you. Is it the angle of the photo? Is it the position of the subject in the photo? What is it about that image that's capturing you? And then you look around that image and identify different things that are supporting the emphasis that is on that subject that helps with that composition. The more that you learn that and you're able to frame that up in your mind, the easier it's going to be when you step into a situation and you go to take a picture, to position yourself correctly, to zoom in or out as you might need to position your subject in a certain way within the frame. All of that stuff will start to come natural as you better understand what makes up a good photo. The second thing is to get comfortable with your camera. Your camera is a tool, and your camera has a lot of settings and options and stuff like that on it. When you go out into a situation, especially when you don't have as much control over that situation, your camera is a tool that you need to be able to understand how to use so that you can capture images fast as the moment takes place. How many times have you missed an opportunity because your camera didn't respond the way that you wanted it to? Chances are it's probably not so much your camera as it is your understanding of how to set up the camera correctly so that you can capture images quickly. That means understanding all of the settings and features and functions of your camera and how to use them in different scenarios, in different types of photography, in different lighting conditions, and all of that stuff. You can check out my Ditch Auto course, which will teach you how to get out of automatic mode, how to use manual mode, but I also have a more in-depth 30-week long video course that teaches you everything about photography from camera fundamentals to composition, and then we have examples of going out and actually shooting different types of photography at the end of that course, and that course is geared to help check all of these boxes and everything that we're going to talk about in this video today. The third tip is understanding the exposure triangle. It's a basic common photography term, but it has to do with the three main settings that your camera has: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, and how each of those can be adjusted to change the exposure of your image. Now, they don't just change the exposure of your image, they also can change the look and feel and the performance of your camera, and so lots can happen when you change those settings. But as you change one of those settings, the triangle starts to change in its shape. You want a well-balanced triangle that produces a well-exposed image, but doesn't lean too heavily on one setting, which may have adverse reactions, resulting in your photo having a look or a quality that you weren't expecting. So exposure triangle is an important thing to learn. That's something that I teach in my courses. Now, the fourth is that you don't have to start shooting out in manual mode. Now, manual mode is definitely the mode that gives you the most control over your camera settings, but you don't have to start out in that mode. Typically, I recommend people start out in shutter priority mode, where you set a shutter speed that's appropriate for the type of photo that you're going to take and let the camera do the rest of the figuring out of settings for the aperture and the ISO. So for example, if you put it in shutter priority mode and you're just out shooting candids, nobody's really moving fast, it's not too dark out, you might start at around 1/160th of a second and then let your camera determine what the aperture and the ISO should be. It's an easy way to take control over one setting and then pay attention to what your camera is doing to figure out those other settings. When you go back and look at your photo, see what aperture it shows, see what ISO it shows, make some adjustments from there. If you're shooting sports or things that are faster moving, you might want to increase your shutter speed up to something like 1/400th of a second. If you're in lower light situations, depending on your camera, you might want to lower the shutter speed to something like 1/80th of a second to let more light in on that sensor. But utilizing either the shutter priority or the aperture priority mode on your camera are great ways to start taking a little bit of control over your camera, but not having to jump right into the pool and mess with all of the settings, which is what manual mode requires. Number 5 is to train your eye. Now, at the beginning of this video, we talked about studying other photos, and that's part of training your eye. But training your eye also means shooting lots of photos, moving yourself around, positioning yourself and the camera differently in the same situation so that you can see from different perspectives. As you move around and change your perspective, you're seeing things differently, and you might look at a scene and say, okay, this really doesn't look interesting to me. The subject looks maybe kind of flat or kind of boring. Let me move over here. Let me move around. Maybe I'll move my subject a little bit if you can. And as you play around and learn by failure, really trying something and say, that didn't turn out. I don't like the way that photo looked. Let me try it again. Don't give up. Keep trying until you capture what your mind's eye saw. Your chances are you're wanting to take a picture of something because there's potential there for a great photo. Your mind's eye saw it, but you need to translate that into actually capturing that and taking what you see in all of its dimension and turning it into an image that's going to be flat, and you're going to want to have dimension in that image, and it's harder to translate all of that. It comes with practice, and so don't give up when you take one picture and it doesn't turn out the way that you want. Move around, reposition, try again, do that again, rinse and repeat as many times as you need until you get the image that you want. Over time, you'll be able to walk into a scene and capture the image that your mind's eye saw almost instantaneously. But I'll tell you the truth, almost 20 years of experience shooting professionally, and sometimes I still need to do this and move myself around a little bit and try to capture the image that I saw in my mind's eye. It's nothing that you perfect, but it is something that you get better with over time. Number 6 is to look for the light. Lighting is everything in photography. You've probably heard this before. Lighting can add texture, it can add shape and dimension to your subject. It can also make things look very flat. So the direction of the lighting and the position of the lighting in regards to your subject or vice versa is pretty important. So if things just aren't turning out the way that you want them to, things just aren't looking good, you're getting weird shadows, or everything looks pretty flat, try repositioning your subject, adding in some additional light, or playing around with that a little bit until you get something that's a little bit more appealing. It's something that I talk pretty heavily in one of my photography courses because it's so important. Number 7 is to always have a subject. When you walk out to shoot a photo, something is going to be the point of interest. Whether it's a landscape or a portrait or pretty much anything, there's going to be a subject. And you might not think of that when it comes to shooting landscapes because you're just shooting a scene of an environment. And what's going to be the subject there? Well, you have to pick a focal point when you shoot landscapes. And with portraits, that's pretty easy to figure out because it's usually a person. That's going to be your subject. When you're shooting landscapes, maybe it's the old barn off in the corner that has a lot of cool characteristics, or it's the mountains in the background, or it's the really neat fence that separates you from the rest of the scene. Something has to be your subject, and so you have to have something that draws the eye in that image. Of course, we can take an image and everything just looks great. It's a beautiful scene, but we typically want to draw the viewer's eye to something. Otherwise, they're going to be dancing around the image thinking, well, this is a good looking image, but it's not going to elicit any emotion. So when you are capturing an image, look for what the subject is going to be in that image. It's easier when it comes to portraits and sports and all those kind of things because it's usually a person. But when it comes to landscapes, it's a little bit harder. But when you have a subject in your image, it tends to draw our eye and focus us a little bit better as a viewer. So always have a subject in mind when you're taking a picture. Number 8 is to be able to identify where you struggle. A lot of times the struggle factor has to do with the camera and the camera settings and understanding how to use the camera. And so once you get that out of the way, that's no longer a struggle factor. And now you're working on composition and capturing better images, and your struggle point may become something different. But if you identify where where your struggle points are, you can then work on those. Now, with photography, you definitely have to have a good understanding of pretty much everything as far as the core fundamentals of photography. And so as you learn more and identify new areas that need work, continue to work on those and put into practice everything that you've used so far. Sometimes going back and trying different things that you learned before but haven't used in a while, just to stay fresh and open your eyes again to new ideas and things that you haven't tried in a while. And this goes right into number 9, which is experiment. Experiment with different compositional techniques. Try different things. Leading lines, rule of thirds, all of those different things. Try them in your photography and use them to help better convey what you're trying to show in the image that you're capturing. Try different lighting effects, moving lighting around, adding lighting, removing lighting, trying different things, positioning your subject differently so that you can experiment with all of the different things that lighting can do in an image. And then of course, lenses too, definitely something you could experiment with. I tend to shoot with a lens for a long period of time and then switch to another lens and shoot with that one for a long period of time, because really it's whatever lens I have with me at the time. But experimenting with lenses can make you have to lean on other areas of your photography more. For example, if you go with a prime lens, which doesn't have a zoom range, it's just a fixed focal length, a lot of times then you have to zoom in and out by moving your body closer or further away from the subject. And forcing yourself to work within that constraint means that you have to experiment and try different things to get the photo that you're looking for, which grows you as a photographer and helps you better understand your camera and also tune in your eye, because you can't fix that with zooming. Number 10 is to try other types of photography. You may really be interested in landscapes and not have any interest at all in sports. But with landscapes, if there's that opportunity where some wildlife runs through your landscape, maybe having shot sports is going to help you better respond to that wildlife that's now running through your scene. You've got your practice with sports because you've been shooting your kids' soccer teams or something like that, and you're getting really good at capturing fast-moving subjects and getting that autofocus locked on, capturing those images, getting the right amount of blur in the background. And when that elk or whatever it is runs into your scene and you're trying to capture it, or that bird in the air, you're able to utilize all of that practice that you had in something that's easier because it's a soccer game. There's kids running around like crazy or whatever, and you have lots of opportunities for fast-moving subjects, and now you're prepared. You know how to use your camera. And so a lot of times, trying other types of photography, you're going to learn something that will benefit you in the type of photography that you're more interested in. So I know for me, all the different types of photography that I've shot over the years has helped prepare me for the different types of images that I shoot professionally, even with real estate jobs. I know for me, all of the experience that I've had shooting in all these different scenarios helps me better prepare as a photographer. Shooting NASCAR helped me prepare for those fast, unexpected moments when shooting weddings. And so experiment with different types of photography. It's going to help you grow substantially. Number 11 is to always edit your images. Take your images off your camera, put them on your computer where you have a bigger display where you can analyze those images. You can crop and rotate, straighten, adjust the colors, do all sorts of things to your photos. So always edit your photos. Take the time to look, because you can see things on a bigger display that you might not have been able to see on a smaller display. So even if it's a photo that you're not necessarily going to use for anything, you can learn something from that photo. Maybe you notice that your focus was a little off. Well, where did the camera end up focusing? And try to identify, like, well, why did the camera focus there? It's just off of my subject, which makes my subject just a little blurry. What do I need to change to make sure that that doesn't happen next time? These are things that you're going to better be able to identify by taking your images, putting them in an editor, and looking at them much closer. Number 12 is to watch behind the scenes type of footage on YouTube or wherever else. Behind the scenes footage gives you a look into another photographer and their process for shooting images. I absolutely love those because I like to see what other photographers are doing, what's going on in their mind as they share that, as they're shooting something, whether it be sports or landscapes or a wedding. It's really interesting just to hear what other people have to say. Sometimes it's just reinforcing that I like my way better, but other times they have something that's part of their workflow that ends up saving me time or helping me get better results because I just hadn't thought of that. that. So go on YouTube, watch behind the scenes stuff. I also have some behind the scenes stuff in my photography courses. We can all learn from each other, and I never stop learning. I like watching what other people have shared. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn and figure out some new things yourself. Number 13 is to recreate other images. Say you find one of those images, like I talked about at the beginning of this video, that was just really intriguing to you. Try and recreate that image and see what you need to do to make an image just like that. It's likely that you're going to end up learning a lot through trial and error trying to create that same image. Everything from figuring out the camera settings to the composition to the editing techniques that created that image, you're going to end up learning a lot attempting to recreate images. So recreating images is a great way to learn more about photography and improve quickly. Number 14 is to plan ahead. How many times have you gone out to shoot something or gone out just to shoot for fun and you forgot your SD card, or your battery was only half charged, or something was awry and you just weren't prepared? You definitely need to plan ahead for your shoots, whatever it is, whether you're just going out to shoot for the day or you have a job coming up that you're going to be shooting. You need to make sure that you have everything that you need for those jobs. I've had dreams in the past where I forgot my SD cards and I show up to a wedding with just my cameras and no SD cards. It would be horrible if something like that happened and you had to drive all the way back to get the things that you needed. So make sure to plan. That may mean putting together a checklist so that you have a checklist of all the things that you need for a specific shoot. Or just having everything in your bag all the time and going through and checking and making sure that what is in your bag is what you need for the next shoot. I always do that a day before, so that way I don't feel rushed on the day of trying to get out the door, and make sure that I'm prepared for each and every shoot. Number 15 is to scout your location. Wherever you end up going and shooting, make sure you have a little bit of time to walk around and take a look. When I do portraits and stuff like that, I like to get there early to scout the location because there might have been somewhere that I had in mind, but when I get there, if I have a little bit of time to scout around, I might find another location that's even better. And my clients are always amazed at how I'm able to do that because they thought I probably got there just when they did, but I was there for about 15 minutes earlier scouting out locations and already had a handful of spots for them to take pictures. That way I'm not wasting their time. We're able to just go and shoot photos and get a lot of different options for them and then be done. And I don't have to waste their time because the time that they're paying me is time that they want to be spending taking pictures, not walking around looking for locations. But on top of that, even if you're not shooting professionally, scouting around your location is going to give you a better idea maybe as to where better lighting is going to be. And if you're not walking around and looking, you're not really going to know where the better light is and where the better angle is. You need to move around and look and maybe take a couple of test pictures and then see what it is that's going to work best. Chances are the first spot that you arrived at isn't going to be the best. As you scout around the location, you might find something better. Number 16 is to not feel like your camera is not enough. It might be that your lens is not enough. People often ask me what's the best camera to buy, and I always say the best camera to buy is one that's within your budget while still giving you enough money to buy a good lens. If you think about it, the light has to go through the lens first before it gets to the camera. A lot of cameras these days are really great, but there's still a lot of cheap lenses out there that are going to affect the quality of your image. And also, cheap lenses are going to affect the quality of autofocus and how fast your camera is able to autofocus. So I always say, get a decent camera, get a better lens. So don't be thinking about how much money should I spend on a camera body. Make sure that you have a good lens to attach to your camera first. Number 17 is to join photography groups and online communities where you can learn from others and share your photos and get comments on those photos. Not all of these communities are created equal. Some of them have toxic people in them. And so you definitely have to enter this with the mindset that it's like anything else. When you share something, some people are going to be rude and other people are going to be super helpful. And so get over that hump because that's just how the world is. People can be rude and frustrating. But if you want to grow, you have to put yourself out there. And so I've joined like a handful of Facebook groups over the years and different online communities where I can share my images and get feedback and also give feedback on other people's images as well. And I always do that from a place of gratitude, being thankful that they're sharing the image with me and giving me the opportunity to look at something that they created and give them feedback. And the mindset that I have going into it is that the image that they shared, they are proud of and they want feedback on. So I'm not looking to destroy them and give them a hard time. I'm looking to give them a little bit of feedback. And I always lead with something positive. I like this photo because ABC. And then I go into, but here's one thing that would have helped draw more of my attention towards the subject. Maybe the depth of field was too shallow or something like that, and I can share a little bit of feedback. But I try to be as valuable as I can and lead with as much grace as possible, because I know that I get nervous sharing my work as well. I'm sure that person was nervous, and I want to make sure I'm providing them value. They don't need anything negative from me. The world gives us enough negative stuff. So go out there, share some images, and also give good feedback to other people as well. Number 18 is to shoot in camera raw. Shoot in raw because you have more flexibility for editing your images. I didn't put this at the beginning of the list because I didn't want people shaking their heads, because people have strong opinions as to shooting raw or JPEG. These days we have a lot of storage on our computers, so it's very easy to store our raw files. Raw files are going to give you more flexibility with editing, being able to increase or decrease the exposure more, change the colors, the color temperature of your image a lot more, and give you a lot more adjustment with your image. I always start out with raw images. Even though JPEGs are great and these cameras are great at capturing JPEG images, I would rather start out with as much data as possible, and raw images give me that data. Number 19 is to back everything up. You definitely need to back everything up, because if you want images to last forever, you need to have a backup of them. If they're just stored on your computer, something happens to that computer, they're gone. If they're just stored on an external hard drive, something happens to that external hard drive, they're gone. So I recommend, if you're going to store things locally, either to have two backups of stuff, one that's on an external hard drive that's connected to your computer, always spinning, and maybe another one that you only plug in from time to time when you have stuff that you need to back up to free up space on that external hard drive, or you find some sort of a cloud solution that allows your stuff to live in the cloud, where it's backed up across many servers and hard drives and stuff over whatever that service is. And then you can always download your stuff. Nothing is more frustrating than having lost a bunch of photos. So you need to have some sort of a backup solution. I do my backups locally, and so I have a hard drive that's connected to my computer, but I also have a NAS storage device, which is a networked attached storage device from Synology that's connected to my network that I could back everything up to. And within that device, there are very high-end hard drives that are designed to be spinning and running for many, many years at a time. And it also has protections in place that notify me if a hard drive is starting to fail, so that I can change out that hard drive for a new one. I've had these Synology backup solutions for years, and I get like 5 or 6 years out of drives before I need to start even thinking about them. And so that's a long time for drives to be working and providing backup solutions for me with no additional cost, no monthly fees or anything like that. The Synology drives are absolutely fantastic, and they're a great local storage solution to keep all of your photos and videos safe. Number 20 is to go back and look at some of those old photos that you capture and to see how far you've progressed over the years. I like to go back and look at some of my old work, which sometimes feels a little bit cringy, but I enjoy doing it because I'm able to see what I have learned. And yes, there's advancements in camera technology and stuff like that, but there's also advancements in my own composition and the way that I see things and the way that I capture things. And I like to be able to compare old to new and see how I've grown over the years. Sometimes I may even have forgotten something that I used to like to do in my images. And so maybe I might bring a little bit of that back into the way that I do things now. But it's good to go back and look at your old stuff so that you can compare, see how far you've come, and be proud of your progress. But that's 20 photography tips I have for beginners who want to get good fast. Definitely apply those that make sense to you. Let me know down in the comment section which one you think is going to be the most help for you, and maybe you have a tip that has helped you. Share that down in the comment section. Make sure to click that subscribe button, and we'll see you back in the next one soon. Take care.